Marlissa was, she was a beautiful young lady. She was very beautiful. She's always had an infectious smile, a really beautiful, bright smile. This is the first time I really actually, in a long time, sat here and actually looked at her, at these pictures, because they're up in the house. But, you know, it's hard to sit and just actually look one by one at her, knowing that she's not here. Pure and innocent, sheer beauty. Because it's difficult at home. It's very difficult.
Also 911, where's your emergency? You send somebody quick! Hey, what's going on? Hello? Did my baby somebody steal my baby? Come here quick! How old is she? Breathing? She look like she's dead. She bleeds dead. Is she breathing? No. Get the bell, man. We'll get somebody there right now.
January 19th, 2008, Austell, Georgia. Homicide detective Natalie Polk receives a call about a case that she'll never forget.
The only thing they told me when they called me about the case was that there was a deceased female laying on the ground and that she was covered in blood and she was unresponsive.
Assistant District Attorney Jesse Evans is also assigned to the case.
My role is a little bit unique as the major crimes prosecutor in that I take phone calls whenever there's a major investigation of homicide in our jurisdiction.
At the scene, detectives meet the distraught couple who discovered the body and called 911. They identify the victim as their granddaughter, 16-year-old Marlissa Wells. Her age and the circumstances of the case immediately strike detectives.
It was a broad daylight murder in a suburban home, a community that doesn't usually experience things like that. Some of the first questions I wanted to know was there any evidence of forced entry? Did the house appear that it had been ransacked, and was there anything missing from the home? We saw no sign of forced entry at the home. The only evidence that any door was unlocked was this back sliding door that just had a small gap in it.
In the kitchen, they find the knife drawer has been rifled and a trail of blood leads away.
There was evidence that the assault started in one place and finished in another. On the banister was just a small bit of blood. And then as you continue down the staircase, you could actually see an additional blood pattern down into the basement area that ultimately ended up in the bathroom. This is one of the most violent crime scenes that I've ever been to. I don't remember being in a crime scene that was as bloody or gruesome. She had at least 60 separate identifiable stab wounds. But she had some pretty significant blunt force trauma to her head as well, including some fractures to her skull.
One detail in particular strikes police as unusually cruel.
There was actually a fork protruding from her back with such force that it was actually bent over.
I mean, it was a brutal, brutal crime. No one deserves to die the way she was killed.
Near the body, detectives make a crucial discovery. Inside a small trash bin, more than one bloody knife. Investigators bag the apparent murder weapons for further testing.
This was a deeply personal crime. This was a crime of rage. This was a very violent murder. And the offender took some time in this crime scene. So it became pretty clear that we needed to be looking at somebody who was going to be pretty upset with her, obviously, for something that was going on in her life. And that's where our focus went.
At the scene, police discover that Marlissa was living with her grandparents at the time of the murder.
Marlissa was sent to live with her grandparents because they were a little stricter, very religious, were big into education. The grandparents did not allow her to date, and they did not like boys in their home, nor did they like boys to even call her on the phone.
I'm just gonna get the last few notes, and then I'll be set.
Good morning, ladies. How are you?
Morning.
How are you, dear?
Good.
According to Marlissa's grandparents, living with them was just what she needed.
Well, did you study?
Of course I did.
By all accounts, outwardly, Marlissa was a pretty good kid. She was in high school. She liked to sing. She was well liked by all of her peers.
No bullying, no problems at school. She just seemed like an average 16-year-old female.
We believe in you. We know you can do it.
Thanks, Grandpa.
It was very confusing. I mean, we just couldn't figure out who would have done this to her.
Thanks, Grandma. Thanks, Grandpa. Bye.
Take care, sweetie.
See ya.
Love you, hon.
But as with any homicide, investigators must question outward appearances.
I think we would all like to hope that we know what's going on in our children and grandchildren's lives, but maybe something was going on in Marlissa's life that maybe the family members just didn't realize. We need to be realistic enough to understand that, especially in a modern technological age, that there's a possibility that maybe our teenagers could be involved in some things that we just don't know about.
Detectives turn to Marlissa's tight-knit community for help filling in the blanks.
There's a real sense of what's happening here. Do I need to be alarmed? There were a lot of questions being posed by a lot of people in the community, especially during what we call the neighborhood canvass. Sometimes people see things in the neighborhood that don't appear remarkable to them, but ended up being pretty remarkable to us. Did they see any unusual vehicles? Did they see anything that appeared to be out of place?
Most of the neighbors said that usually it's pretty quiet over there. Everything was normal at their house.
But one conversation suggests Marlissa had a secret.
There was a neighbor that recalled seeing Marlissa at different periods of time letting someone into the house. Boyd.
We knew that she was not allowed to have a boyfriend, and that kind of gives you a sense that she has more in her life going on than what the grandparents know.
We needed to pretty quickly figure out what Marlissa was involved in. There was something more secretive going on here.
The 16-year-old was found dead inside her grandfather's home in Austell. She'd been stabbed and struck with an object. Police are citing blunt force trauma and incised wounds to the head and neck area as her likely cause of death.
My father couldn't tell me anything at the time because he was hysterically crying. It sounded as if somebody had broke in. And that was all I could get. So I'm like, oh my God, something had happened to Marlissa. When I got to the house, my father came over to me and informed me that she was dead. And all I could do was beat on the ground and say, why? How and why did this happen?
It seems that right before her death, Marlissa Wells was harboring a secret.
So when we heard that she was sneaking boys in, I'm like, okay, who's her boyfriend? Who's she with?
There was one neighbor that said something about seeing a green car in the neighborhood, and that there was a description of a black male in a green car. The green car was something that we knew we were going to need to look into, and it turns out the family members knew somebody who owned a green car that matched that.
Detectives wonder if the driver neighbors spotted knows something about Marlissa's death.
Good afternoon, officer.
Are you James Marshall?
Yes.
Well, I'm investigating the death of Marlissa Wells. Need to know where you were 2 nights ago, Saturday.
I was at the playground with my little girls.
Oh, yeah? What were the times?
I was there all afternoon. You can ask my wife.
All right, let's go talk to her.
But when detectives look into it, it seems their lead is a dead end.
We didn't find any other neighbor that recalled that from that day or the day prior. What we suspect is maybe this neighbor had gotten the days wrong and was recalling seeing a car from a previous day. I think we got a feel that maybe we need to refocus on some of the other evidence or lack thereof.
Still, investigators consider the possibility that Marlissa was secretly dating someone at the time of her murder.
We looked at the information the neighbors gave us and found that they were neighborhood boys that liked to hang out at Marlissa's house with her.
If true, it means Marlissa kept her social life secret from her grandparents.
My grandfather was old school, so he believed in being courted and then eventually being proposed to and then probably marriage or what have you, and then babies. I've never heard of Marlissa having company at his home.
Despite what her family says, police suspect that few know the truth about their victim.
We need to talk to the people that she was sharing her most secret information with to find out what was really going on with Marlissa in her personal life.
You got my edges. Get your edges. Worry about my edges.
Sarai Beeg and Marlissa have been friends since sophomore year.
Me and Marlissa, we had our little routine every morning.
I mean, you're supposed to be praying for me. I guess the prayers aren't working.
We get our breakfast and just chit-chat until the bell rang, then we go to class.
Listen, I'm not ready for this pop quiz. I know.
Investigators hope that Sarai can reveal the truth about Marlissa's private life.
I know this is scary, but I just need to ask you a few questions about Marlissa, okay? Okay. Does she have any friends or anything that her family didn't know about? It's okay, Sarai. I just need to know. This is important.
Marlissa talked about one guy. His name was Matthew.
Marlissa's relationship with Matthew was kind of confusing. She would speak highly of him, but nobody I knew him. He was definitely a mystery man.
Marlissa wasn't allowed to date.
Her grandparents had spoken to her many a times about her not being in a relationship and how they disapproved of it. So for her to hide the relationship makes plenty of sense.
Okay. That's good. You did real good.
Police look into the name Matthew Wilkins.
Matthew Wilkins was the star basketball player and one of the more popular kids at his school. Well respected by his friends and peers, and had a pretty good family that cared about him.
He had a nice house in the suburbs, went to a Christian school. I mean, he had everything going for him.
Though Matthew already left for college, Marlissa was determined to continue the relationship.
Matthew was Marlissa's first crush. It was her first boyfriend.
Hello?
Hey, it's me.
Hey. How you doing?
Marlissa would talk about Matthew as if he was her knight in shining armor. She would talk about his sports, him being in college. She would talk about how they're going to live together and get married and start a future and have this many kids. Today it's 2, tomorrow's 10.
Okay, how was class?
You know, I'm really settling in here. It's nice.
Matthew is an unlikely suspect.
He seems like a normal, everyday, average kid. He was very friendly with everybody. No criminal history, not even a driver's history.
When can I see you again?
I'll be back home soon. I'm thinking maybe a few weeks, not long.
At the time of the crime, Matthew Wilkins was actually living down at the college he attended, which is down in South Georgia, not here in our county.
Well, I love you.
All right, love you. Talk to you soon.
It seems the popular athlete was too far away to have committed the crime. But as investigators will soon uncover, he's been keeping a secret that's about to shed light on Marlissa's killer.
The first time that I met Marlissa, it was my first or second day in high school. I was coming out of the lunchroom, and someone actually threw a sandwich at the back of my head. I had lettuce and tomatoes in the back of my head, and I was completely embarrassed, crying and everything. And Marlissa came up, and she comforted me. She took the food out of my hair and defended me and walked me to class. She was very kind. I wish she was here now. She didn't deserve this.
Talk to you soon.
It seems that Marlissa Wells didn't know everything about her secret boyfriend, Matthew Wilkins. After some digging, detectives learned that he was seeing someone else.
Matthew Wilkins was seeing another girl. She, by all accounts, was sort of the outward girlfriend. She was the one that everyone knew Matthew Wilkins to be involved in. And then you have Marlissa, who was sort of the relationship on the side.
The revelation provides detectives with motive.
I think it was inevitable that Matthew's girlfriend eventually would start asking questions about things that were going on. Is this a possibility that, you know, his girlfriend may have been jealous, and that could have been the cause of something as horrific as this?
Police are eager to speak to Matthew's other girlfriend, Simone.
When we first interviewed Matthew's girlfriend, one of the tricky parts was, you know, we needed to get information from her. So we needed to ease her fears that it was appropriate to talk to us, and it was important for us to get certain information from her.
So tell me something, Simone. Who was Marlissa Wells to you?
Some girl Matthew was dating behind my back, and I found out.
In fact, she even shared that she saw a text message at one point and confronted him about it.
So what'd you do about it?
I dumped him. What do you think?
But instead of exacting revenge on Marlissa, Simone says that she simply ended the relationship.
I don't need that kind of drama in my life.
Sure about that?
You think I did this? I was upset, but I didn't go after the girl. I was at work. You can ask anyone.
I will.
We don't ever take a person's word at face value. We want to look for the corroboration. We were able to confirm definitively that she was nowhere near the crime scene at the time of the murder.
Neither Simone nor Matthew can be placed at the scene of the crime. So detectives turn to Marlissa's cell phone for clues.
Cell phone evidence is oftentimes the most important critical evidence that we have in homicide investigations.
It would give us an information about who the last person she was talking to, that could be a possible suspect, and the time frame of her death.
But when police check Marlissa's belongings for her phone, it's nowhere to be found.
We don't have any reason to believe that she lost it or misplaced it. That indicated to us in pretty clear terms that we need to be very focused on Marlissa's phone. Our perpetrators thought it was important enough to take that from the crime scene. It was going to have some pretty damning evidence on it.
Police turn to Marlissa's phone records and discover that one name appears with alarming frequency.
She's had an awful lot of contact with Matthew Wilkins up until the time we suspect she was murdered.
You knew they had something important that they wanted to discuss, or they had a lot of stuff going on that they wanted to talk about. At that point, we knew this was a pretty good piece of information, and we needed to find out where Matthew was.
But when they look for him at his dorm, 200 miles away, he isn't there. Instead, he's at his childhood home, just a short distance away. But Matthew's parents won't let him speak to authorities without a lawyer. So investigators do the next best thing. They get a warrant to search Matthew's home.
The search warrant covers the whole house, so it's every room, every closet, anywhere any piece of evidence could be hidden. Looking for bloody clothes, looking for Marlissa's cell phone, looking for anything that would lead him to Marlissa.
But right off the bat, police don't find anything incriminating.
Nothing stood out as being anything wrong. We didn't find any evidence leading to him being a suspect.
Have police been focused on the wrong man? Little do they know, Marlissa had another secret that's about to be revealed.
I found this the other day. This was her 1-year birthday. And, you know, we think about how the kids take the cake and smush it and stuff. So we didn't get cake with ice cream. We just bought a little loaf and stuck a candle in it and let that do, because we didn't want to have a big mess everywhere. And I'm standing there next to her, holding her up, because she was only one standing in a chair. So that was a pretty fun day. Those were happy times. Those were good times. And if I could, I would turn back the hands of times on that particular day, time, and moment, you know?
Investigators are hard-pressed to find any evidence linking Matthew Wilkins to the murder of Marlissa Wells. That is, until they make a strange find at his childhood home.
One of the officers found a pile of clothes behind the furnace. What was weird about it was not somewhere you typically store clothing.
Wrapped inside the clothing is a pair of sneakers. But none of the clothes bear the obvious signs of Marlissa's bloody murder. If Matthew Wilkins killed Marlissa, surely his clothes would be covered in the proof. Still, detectives send the items to the lab for testing.
At this point, we had no substantial evidence linking Wilkins to the crime at all.
I would say the hardest part of my job is the uncertainty. Are we going to be able to identify the offender? What evidence are we going to be able to obtain? Am I going to be able to help this victim's family?
But the questions don't linger for long. Because an unexpected secret is about to come out. Marlissa's teenage brother, Eric, comes forward with something to confess.
Eric, right?
Yeah.
Eric actually approached me and said, I need to talk to you about some things that I know about.
Eric? Do you have something you want to tell me?
I knew I needed to talk to him now to try to get some information because he really acted like he knew something.
It's okay. You just need to tell me everything you know.
He said, I know what's been going on in Marlissa's life.
I went to my grandmother's house to visit Marlissa. And I overheard a phone conversation I wasn't supposed to hear.
Marlissa's younger brother, Eric, disclosed to us that he had seen and heard at least a couple of threats.
Listen, don't yell at me. No, I don't deserve to be talked to like this.
One was a phone call.
If you lay one hand on me, I will call the cops.
But that's not all Eric witnessed. He says he also saw threats made against Marlissa on social media. The person behind them was none other than Matthew Wilkins.
A different picture started to emerge.
Investigators need to know more about these threats. They turn back to Marlissa's friend, Sarai.
So how were things between Marlissa and Matthew?
I honestly don't know. I never met him.
Marlissa must have told you something about him. Why'd she stay with him?
She had to stay with him.
Why?
I promised I wouldn't say anything.
Marlissa was scared that she was going to lose Matthew. She did express to me a few times that she would do anything to keep him.
But, according to Sarai, Marlissa's desperation stemmed from her deepest held secret. Marlissa told her friend she was pregnant.
This was the other secret that Marlissa was carrying with her in the months and the weeks leading up to her murder. And she was really struggling with how she was going to deal with the situation.
She was really upset because her family was very religious and they were going to look at her in a bad way because she was only 16 years old, not married, in high school.
She knew that the consequences could be extreme. She did cry about the fear of disappointing her grandparents. She was afraid she was letting them down.
Marlissa was increasingly conflicted about whether to see the pregnancy through. But then, in the weeks leading up to her murder, she made peace with a decision.
Hey, it's me. Okay, just meet me at my house.
It was something that she wanted. She loved children. She always talked about having kids. And I think for her, at the beginning, she felt like this was gonna bring her family together with Matthew.
So, you called me. I'm here.
But would Matthew feel the same? Marlissa planned to find out.
She was extremely nervous, but she was gonna be stern in her decision. I went to school Monday morning, and I sat there waiting at the table all by myself. One of Marlissa's friends came up to me and asked me if I was okay. And I said, yes, I'm fine. And she asked me, you know, what are you doing? Why are you sitting here? And I was like, I'm waiting for Marlissa. Is she here? And they were like, you didn't hear? And I was like, no.
The 16-year-old was found dead last weekend inside her grandfather's home.
When they told me that she passed away, I had never experienced a loss. I was young. No family members, no friends, no nothing had ever passed. So For me, I was just kind of stuck, kind of confused. I actually didn't find out the actual details until I Googled it. And I wish I hadn't.
Hey, it's me. I need to talk to you about something.
Marlissa was gonna tell Matthew that she wasn't gonna get an abortion.
Okay, just meet me at my house.
She was going to keep the baby, and if he decided to leave, that would be on him.
Bye.
Police discover that on the day of her murder, Marlissa Wells planned to tell her boyfriend, Matthew Wilkins, she was going to have their baby.
I absolutely thought that her being pregnant was something to do with the crime.
But investigators have nothing directly tying Matthew to the murder until they get their hands on a bombshell clue. Matthew's sneakers aren't as clean as they look. Lab results show that spots found on Matthew's sneakers are a match for Marlissa's blood.
That was perhaps the most damning piece of evidence that we had in the case, and it made a pretty compelling case against Matthew Wilkins.
In January 2008, police have enough evidence to arrest Matthew Wilkins for the murder of Marlissa Wells.
So, you called me, I'm here, what's up? Come on, Mar, tell me.
I'm pregnant.
You're what?
I'm pregnant.
You're joking, right? You're not keeping the baby, right?
Of course I'm keeping the baby. I thought you'd be happy.
Well, I'm not happy! How could you want a baby? Now?
This is our chance to be a family.
That's gonna ruin my life.
Matthew thought it was the end of his life. No more basketball, no more college, no more girls, no more living on your own. I believe he felt like he was fixing to lose everything with Marlissa being pregnant. He felt like that was his only way out. But he wanted to not disappoint his parents. He would do anything to make his parents proud.
I don't think any human being is capable of doing what he did to her. But that was proven wrong.
At trial, District Attorney Jesse Evans presents a piece of evidence that drives home the savage nature of the crime.
Matthew Wilkins had actually had sexual intercourse with her before he did what he did. It is maybe one of the most telling aspects of what's going on in Matthew Wilkins' mind. The idea that a person on one moment could be perfectly fine with sharing the most intimate moments you can with another human being, but in the next moment would have no problem chasing a person through a house. brutally beating their head against the toilet, and then stabbing her repeatedly, sticking a fork in her back because she no longer was of utility to him.
A jury wastes no time in finding Matthew Wilkins guilty of murder. He's sentenced to life in prison plus 20 years.
If I had known that this young man was abusive as much as the people were coming out and saying, there's no way he would have been a part of my daughter's life. I would have had him locked up. If I would have had to have moved her out of state, I would have done it. I would have done everything in my power to keep her away from a young man like that. Because, you know, never want your child to have to go through anything like that. Never. No one would want that.
There's no such thing as closure. Nobody's ever going to forget Marlissa, but there is some sense of relief that we were at least able to hold her murderer accountable.
While mourners struggle to take stock of the grave losses, one final secret emerges.
As it turns out, Marlissa Wells wasn't pregnant. I think it makes the story that much more tragic. You know, it's hard to look at that and not say, well, isn't that just another fact that makes it seem so much more senseless, that the catalyst for what probably happened to her, that the fact that she thought she had this unplanned pregnancy was only in her mind and wasn't even the truth.
If I was angry, I wouldn't be here to do this interview. God has given me a peace that passes all understanding, and it hasn't done anything but made me strong. It took a lot of praying, and it took a lot of crying and a lot of talking, you know, in order to get to the point that I am today.